Okay, it's Parshas Yisro. We are back in the United States. We took the show on the road for a week. Actually, we went home for a week. Now we're back here. First thing I must do is I must apologize to the proprietor of this wonderful shop here, Yosef Motorpearl. I must apologize, first of all, that we weren't here last week. And second of all, that I just want to tell you that no matter how beautiful the scenery is behind me here today, this week, all the sandwiches and salads and fried onions and whatever else he has back here, nothing compares to where we did the shiur last week and how really beautiful the scenery was behind us there. If you haven't seen it, go back and check the archives and you'll see. What we want to talk about today, actually, even though Bshvat, today was Bshvat, and Bshvat is over here now. Though in some places in the world it's still Bshvat. If you travel west enough, it still is Bshvat today. So I wanted to discuss a little bit about Bshvat and then mix in a little bit about Parshas Yisro. Has anybody here ever wondered what is so exciting about Bshvat? Why do we get so excited about it? First of all, let me ask you, does anybody really know? I know people think that when Bshvat comes, they think that they start to think of springtime and that somewhere underground or under all that snow, the ground is beginning to wake up, but that actually is not the real meaning of Bshvat. That actually isn't why we do celebrate Bshvat. So has anybody wondered why, what it's nageh to us, why are we so excited about Bshvat? So really, it's brought down in halacha. What is Bshvat? Bshvat is like this. A person might think that what happens is you're mechuyev to give meiser from your produce that the fields produce. You're mechuyev to give meiser, and a person might think, since really there's no meiser police, there's nobody that tells you that will come to your field and say, unless you give meiser today, we're going to take away your field. There's no one that tells you that you have to give meiser to a specific Levi. There's no meiser police that tells you to do any of those things. So human nature does what? Human nature pushes it off and says, you know what, I really wanted to give meiser, but I don't know, maybe I'm not going to earn enough money next year. Maybe the year after that I'll need to save a little more money. So human nature is to push things off. We push off the meiser that we're supposed to give, and what happens is that life goes on and on and on, and what happens is nobody lasts forever, and it comes the end of your life, and you're not paying up the meiser. So the Chachamim said that Bshvat is the cutoff day, that you cannot give meiser from one year to the next. You have to give meiser from things that are before Bshvat, and you have to give that by Bshvat. And after Bshvat is already considered the next year. In other words, that is the halacha of Bshvat. So the question is really, again, the question we asked at the beginning, why is it such a big celebration? Why are we so excited, and why do we make such a really big thing about Bshvat? So Rav Moshe Feinstein Zatzal says a beautiful vart. He says a beautiful point here. He says the vart is, Dr. Moshe, that the simcha gedola that we have on Bshvat is that now that you give the meiser, it says, Rav Moshe says, until you give the meiser, the other 9 chalakim really do not belong to you. It says we have a whole twisted idea of what meiser is, and we'll carry that on in 1 second to talk about tzedakah today. But Dr. Moshe, that until you give that meiser, it doesn't belong to you. When you give the meiser, so now it's taka simcha gedola, it's a big simcha, because the other 9 chalakim now belong to you. In other words, let's take it, apply it to what we're doing today. You got another email. Let's apply it to what we're doing today. Today we have the mitzvah of tzedakah. A person has to give tzedakah. A person has to give meiser. A person has to give tzedakah. And the same human nature that we discussed at the beginning about the meiser from the fields happens today. A person knows he's mechuyev to give tzedakah, but what happens is, again, you push it off, and you push it off, and you say, maybe I won't be able to afford it. Rav Moshe says a very interesting point, actually. He says, you know what? The world is created in a very interesting way. He says, technically, really, there is no reason that any person, that anybody in the world should have more than the next person. The way the world is set up, and the way the world should have been set up, is that every single person should have the same amount of money. Every single person should be given by Hashem the same amount of earnings. Right? Because why not take the world, divide it up into a pizza, whatever, take all the funds, divide it by the amount of people, everybody should have the same exact amount of thing, the amount of money. So why is it, Dr. Moshe, for some reason we don't understand, Rabbi Shalom has a cheshbon that he gives one person the money of somebody else. And he makes certain people are more affluent, and other people are not as other people don't have as much money, and some people have to give. Some people are the givers, and some people are the takers. But we have no idea why. So Dr. Moshe, a very interesting thing. He says every person has a mitzvah of tzedakah. A person has a mitzvah of meiser. Dr. Moshe, this same thing that we said about giving it from your fields. Moshe says until you give your tzedakah, the money that you have, that the Rebbeinu Shalom gave you, this money that Hashem gave you is not yours. It's not yours. It's not yours until you go ahead and give the tzedakah. But once you give the tzedakah, then it's taka simcha. Then the person could feel that whatever else you have left, now it's yours. Now, I don't want to say you earned it, but now you've cut out your right place in the world. In other words, that's the same thing. And only when you give the tzedakah and meiser, that's when the money actually belongs to you. And now, that's the lesson that we learn from Tu Bshvat. That's the happiness that we have in Tu Bshvat. In a Chanami here today, we're not giving meiser of fruit, and we should be zoicha Amir Tashem that we should have these mitzvahs back. But right now, we don't have that. So Moshe says the mitzvahs of tzedakah, and that's what you're supposed to keep in mind on Tu B'Shvat. Moshe actually goes through a whole cheshbon and says it would be better if a person did it once a month or once a week, and even the best, he says, once a day. Okay, not everybody's on that madrega that they could every night come home and make a cheshbon hanefesh and a cheshbon of exactly what you earned and what you owe. But that's the simcha of Tu B'Shvat, Moshe says. That is the simcha of today, and it's taka big simcha when a person takes into account on Tu B'Shvat that you gave your meiser, that you gave your tzedakah. So now you could have that simcha. Tu B'Shvat is the cutoff date. Now you could have that simcha that whatever else you have now sort of technically belongs to you. Just to finish off with a small Nesiv Shalom on this week's parsha, the Nesiv Shalom brings down from the Beis Avram that the Shabbos Parshas Yisro, there are those Rebbes in previous generations that used to call Shabbos Parshas Yisro, which is this week's parsha, Shavuos Katan. Everybody knows that on Shavuos we celebrate Matan Torah, and we learn the parsha of Matan Torah. And he said this is based on a mimer from the Rishona. The Rishona would call that this parsha, he would call it Shavuos Katan. And what's the reason? He says like this. Just like the Zman is Ma'ira Kriya, what happens when it comes to Sukkot, it comes to Pesach, it comes to Shavuos, whatever we're celebrating on that Yontif, on Sukkot we're celebrating one thing, on Pesach we're celebrating another, you'd see us Mitzrayim, on Shavuos we're celebrating Matan Torah. And if you look at the Kriya, at the Kriyas of Torah that we do by each one, we lay that one. No, the Zman is Ma'ira Kriya. Zok the Rishona, Zok the Beis Avram, based on this Rishona, that you should know, a person should know, it's also the other way around. That the Kriya is Ma'ir the Zman. That this week when we learn Parshas Yisro, this week when we learn about Kabbalas HaTorah, this week when we learn the Aseres HaDibros, that is Ma'ir min HaShamayim, a special, auspicious time for each person himself to be makabel the Torah. In other words, the Kriya, the same way it works one way, it works the other way. And every person has to think about it this week, that we have a special opportunity this Shabbos to, again, we know we have it on Shavuos, but again, each person in his own way to be makabel the Torah, to be makabel on himself, to learn a little more, to be makayim the mitzvahs of the Torah a little more, and that's something special which we have this week. And let us use that opportunity and concentrate on it this week when we learn the parsha, and we should be zeicha to each person should be zeicha to upgrade and uplift their own individual Kabbalah Satira.